Hello, I'm Boris. Today I'll go to the last part of the demo series of building Spring Boot RESTful service on AWS. In this video, I will show you the demonstration about creating a code pipeline. I will first explain the whole CI/CD pipeline operates in our case. This diagram shows different components involved in the whole CI/CD process. We can see GitHub, code build, code deploy. The pipeline will be triggered when we commit and push the source code to GitHub. AWS CodePipeline will first pull source code for the pipeline directly from GitHub. Then it will trigger the build and unit test in code build. That is the continuous integration process. Then code pipeline will trigger the code deploy to start the blue-green deployment. That is the continuous delivery process. Code deploy needs two files to do the deployment: the abstract YAML file and the task.dev.json file. The abstract YAML file is for managing the lifecycle of the deployment, while the task.dev.json file is for defining the ECS task. We will then start the blue-green deployment with the help of the ALB, the application load balancer. I will show you how to create the code pipeline in the demo. In my demonstration, I will follow these steps. I will first create a pipeline. In the second step, I will add the build stage in the pipeline. And next, I will create the deploy stage for the pipeline. Whenever I modify the source code, it will trigger the pipeline. And in the last part of the demo, I will show you how to add a manual approval step before the deployment. Okay, let's start the demo. This is the AWS Management Console. I type code pipeline here. Then I choose code pipeline. Then we go to screens for creating the code pipeline. We can click Create Pipeline button here. Okay, here I provide the name, my first pipeline. I choose the new service role. We can see that it will automatically generate the name for you. Then we click Next. I go to the source stage. We choose the source repository. I choose GitHub version 2. Then I click Connect to GitHub. I provide the name Math Source Connection. And then click Connect to GitHub. Then select the GitHub app which I have created before. Okay, then we should choose the correct source repository, the math service here. I select the main branch. Okay, it is very important that we select this option, start the pipeline on the source code change. If we select this option, the pipeline will be started when the source code change. Then we go to the build stage. We should select the build provider. I choose AWS Code Build. In the code pipeline, I select the one that I created before, the build map service. Okay, then we click Next. For the deploy stage, I skip this stage and will add it later. We can click the Create Pipeline button and it will create the code pipeline. Okay, we can see that the pipeline has been created, and the pipeline will automatically start after the creation. It is now in the source stage. It is connecting to the GitHub repository. Okay, now it just go to the build stage. It starts the AWS code build project. We can click here to see the details of the build process. We can see that it is undergoing different phases of build process. You can see that the build log here. It may take some time for the build process to complete. And I refresh it. It is still building. Okay, we can see that the build stage is completed. We are now going to edit the pipeline to add the deploy stage so that it will trigger the blue-green deployment. Okay, here we can click the Add Stage button. I type deploy here. Then we click add. And then we can click the Add Action Group button. In the action name, I type deployment. For the action provider, I choose Amazon ECS blue-green deployment. For the input artifacts, I choose the source artifacts. And for the code deployed application name, I choose the one which has been created in previous video. For the deployment group, there's only one, which is also created in previous video. For the task definition and also the abstract YAML file, we choose from the source artifacts. I have put them in the source code directory. You can find the source in the GitHub. Let's look at the abstract YAML file. I changed the task definition ARN to a placeholder, the task definition. The pipeline will replace it with the ECS task ARN when the task is created based on the task definition. You should also check that the container name and container port is correct. Okay, this is the taskdev.json file. We should check the container image URI and the container name. For the port mapping, we should make sure that the host port is set to 0. This enables the dynamic port mapping, which has been discussed in previous video, the part 3 demo. Okay, here we type the file name, the taskdev.json file, and also the abstract.yaml file. The code pipeline will read the files from the source directory. And finally, we can scroll down and click the Done button. We can see that the deploy stage has been added, and we can go to click the Save button. Then it helps to save the changes. Okay, we can see that the pipeline has been saved. Okay, before I trigger the pipeline again, let's look at the target group. Let's go to EC2 and then select the load balancing. I click EC2 here. Then I choose target group. We can see that TG1 is now pointing to my ALB. And after we trigger the code pipeline, the deployment will start and it will shift the traffic to TG2. Now I'll go to modify the source code and I'll create another REST endpoint for the subtraction. In the math service, I have already created a subtraction method. And so I go to the controller class, controller.java, and I just copy this method and create another REST endpoint. And modify the mapping path to subtract. And then modify the method name to get subtraction result. Then I need to call another service method, the do subtraction method. Okay, I'll save the change and try to commit the source code. Okay, and I modified the comment. I modified to add subtraction method. Okay, then I commit and then push the source code. Okay, I click the push button. Okay, let's go back to look at the pipeline. We can see that the pipeline has been started and is now in the build stage. Let's click and see the build details. You can see that it is processing different phases. And it is the build log. It is in the building process. Okay, we can see that the build stage is finished. And now we go to the deploy stage. Let's click and see the deployment details. Okay, we can see that the traffic is now 100% in the original task set. It will gradually shift to the new one. It is performing different phases of deployment. Okay, we can see that the blue-green deployment is finished. Now all the traffic go to the new task set. Okay, let's look at the target group again. I refresh the screen. We can see that my ALB is now registered with TG2. Okay, let's go to the load balancer. And I copy the DNS name. I test it with the browser. You can see that the health check is succeed. And then next test with Postman. I would like to test the subtraction API. I input number 1 equal to 10, and number 2 equal to 3. 10 minus 3 should be equal to 7. Okay, we can see the calculation is correct. So the REST API has been deployed and is now in target group 2. So I go back to the deployment, and now I terminate the task set. And refresh the screen. Okay, we can see that all the stages in the pipeline were completed. Okay, now I'm going to add one more step to modify the pipeline. I want to add a manual approval step in the deployment instead of automatically deploy to the ECS, because it is quite common that we need to get approval from someone before the deployment. So I click Add Action Group. In the action name, I type Manager Approval. Okay, in the action provider, I select Manual Approval. Then I click Done. Okay, I should revise the action name because it doesn't allow any space. Okay, then I click Done. Okay, we can see that the manual approval steps is added, but it is not saved yet. Then I save the pipeline. I click Save. Okay, we can see that the additional approval step is saved now. Now, I would like to trigger the pipeline by modifying the source code. I'll just do a very small modification. I just add a space in the health check message. Okay, I just add a space after the succeeded. Then I commit the source code. And modify the comments. Then I click Commit and Push. Okay, I will now push the source code to GitHub. Okay, now we go back to see if the pipeline is triggered. Now refresh the screen. We can see that it is now in progress. Let's click here and see the details. You can see that it is now in the build stage. Let's see the details. Here it is the build log. Okay, the build stage is finished. It is now in the deploy stage. We can see that it is waiting for approval. So I click the review button. We can type the comment. I just type approved by manager. We can click reject or approve, and I click approve button. You can see that it's approved now, and the deployment will start. Let's click here to see the deployment details. You can see that the traffic is shifting. The traffic is shifting to the new task set. Okay, let's refresh the screen. Okay, you can see that the traffic is shifted to the new task set. Let's go to see the health check message. I refresh it. You can see that the health check message has changed. A space is added. This means that the change has been deployed. Now I can terminate the original task set. Okay, now we go back to see the pipeline. I refresh the screen. We can see that the execution state is succeeded. And we can also see the comment of the source code change here. Modify health check message. Okay, that's it. This is the end of the whole demo series. Hope you like it. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe my channel. Hope to see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.